To share contact information and all that? Form groups? Okay. Give you just another moment to do that. Huh. Sorry about that. Thanks. All right, how am I going to do this? I guess if I write something on the board, I will write it on both sides. That'll be fun. Really? If I write something on the board, I will spin it around so everybody can see it. And I'll put the board over here. And I won't depend on the board too much. Okay. You guys are ready? You've started, you've exchanged contact information. You will be able to have exchanged contact information before the end of the hour, now that we're 15 minutes into it. All right, perfect. You took the class because you want to learn about CNC machining. You took the class because it fulfills a degree requirement that you feel like fulfilling. Did you have a different reason? You just didn't feel like standing up? Oh, fulfilling degree requirements. Okay, and so it does fulfill degree requirements. You guys know which degree requirements it fulfills? Do you know? It could be an engineering elective. It could be your out of major engineering class if you're like an ECE or a CS and you have to take it out of major engineering class. It also fulfills the realization requirement if you're an ME, because we actually make something in the class, so that's kind of cool. We should be capturing on Echo, and we should be, we're totally streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and all kinds of places right now. And I will figure out, I was going to share some slides with you guys, but you have to go down to the desk and you have to ask for the HDMI cable because they don't leave one up here for you. So that's all right. I'll do without the slides. I don't want to hesitate anymore. So I'm going to talk. I'll write on the whiteboard as necessary, and then I may bring the whiteboard over so the cameras can see it for the people that are at home. So welcome to 2022, or as I like to call it, 2020 again. It's been a crazy couple of years. I really wanted to be in person in the classroom. If you can't be in person because you're sick and you got to quarantine or isolate or whatever that is, we are going to have all the capture stuff going all the time. You can go on live and you can actually interact in the chat and stuff if you go on live, if you're at home. I would like you to work with this group. Now, you may or may not be in the same lab section as your group. That's okay. Doesn't matter. I'd like you guys to be groups, though, and work on the group assignments together. Who knows what the rules are about cheating on assignments at WPI? Like, what happens if you get caught cheating on an assignment? Anybody? Let's say you copied somebody else's answer and submitted as if it was yours. Anybody know what the rules are? Really? Are you just pretending not to know the rules? Because you don't want to be the guy that knows the rules because you're the person that had to like, oh, you know the rules. Okay, tell me. So that's close. First, the faculty member has to like catch you, right? Yeah. So rule number one, don't get caught, right? So you have to get caught. Now, if I catch you cheating, I have responsibility now. I must report it to the Dean of Students office. And then the Dean of Students looks you up. And you're like, oh, they've never cheated before. Then it's up to me. And I can talk to you and work something out, but it stays on your sort of your, like, there totally is no such thing as a permanent record. But it would stay on like the record the Dean of Students office keeps, right? So then if somebody else catches you cheating for the first time, they know about it, and it's not the first time. If it's the second time, then you got to go to the campus hearing board, and they decide how severe it is, and they might decide to kick you out of WPI, which would really suck. Like if you want to not go to WPI, you could just stop coming. You don't have to get kicked out. I don't want to talk to the campus hearing board. Like, that's no fun for me. I don't want to talk to the dean of students' office. That's no fun for me. It adds no value to me. It's like negative value to whoever I'm talking about. I mean, maybe they learned that lesson, like, don't be so stupid that you get caught cheating. So I have tried to design the class in such a way that it's impossible to cheat. On all assignments except for the comprehensive final exam, you are encouraged and often required to talk to each other about them. Help your friends learn the material, especially in your groups, right? There will be assignments that you hand in individually. And so, what's your name? Ian. What's your name? Logan. So I can tell already Logan is super smart. Ian's kind of a slacker. Logan, you could share your answers with Ian, and Ian could just submit your answers. And it wouldn't be cheating according to my rules, right? It wouldn't be cheating according to my rules. It would be cheating you, Ian, because you wouldn't have learned the material. And it would actually be cheating you, Logan, because you will learn it better if you teach it to Ian, right? The best way to learn anything is to teach it to somebody else. So I wouldn't say, hey, it turns out he's not as smart as he thought he was. Like, not only did you have the same answer that he had, but it was the stupidest answer I heard all term, which is, by the way, how I found out what the rules are for cheating at WPI. Because my first term teaching, way back in C term 2006, ME 1800, and we had a lab report. And I was like all excited to grade lab reports because I was young and stupid. And it was a Sunday morning, and I'm sitting at my kitchen table, and I'm in my bathrobe drinking coffee, and I downloaded all the lab reports, printed them out, and I'm going through them, and I'm making, and I got to realize immediately, you got to actually look at all of them before you can decide how they relatively rank versus each other, right? So you quickly skim through them, and then you make different piles, and I'm reading this one, I'm like, man, I've seen this before. And I go back to one of the piles, and they hadn't even changed the font. Like, exactly the same, like, just changed the names on the header block. And the reason I knew I had seen it before was because it was the worst one out of the whole class. So it was the wrong one to copy, too. Anyway, so that's how I had to learn what the rules were. It turns out it was one person in one of the groups. So somebody who lived down the hall from him he said, hey, I'm having trouble in M1800. Can I take a look at your lab report so I can see how to get started? That's a fair thing. Even in the other rules, I don't think that's cheating. Take a look at your thing so I can see how to get started. That sounds pretty fair. And the other guy's like, yeah, sure, it's on my computer. And you go in and out of other people's dorm rooms, right? We used to do that when I was a student here. In fact, my dorm room, the door was never locked when I was a student here. We had a mini fridge that my roommate's mother kept stocked with soda and snacks. And there was a jar on top that you could take stuff out of it, just put money in. His mother funded our whole freshman year. Anyways, so he goes in there, he copies it, and he's like, oh, I got a whole report. I don't need to do anything. And he goes to his group partners and he says, hey, I already did the report. You guys don't have to worry about it. And they hand it in. Yeah, don't do that. Anyway, so you are encouraged and in some cases required to collaborate with each other. Therefore, it's impossible to cheat. Now I can't catch you. Perfect. Cheating is over with. Also, engineers don't work in a vacuum, right? Has anybody worked as an engineer in a job, summer job, something like that, done engineering? How often were you in a vacuum where you weren't allowed to talk to anybody else or look up information? Never, right? Anybody else? Yeah. Did it ever happen where they're like, all right, go in your office. Here's the assignment. Oh, and you can't use any books, right? Never happened. It will never happen to an engineer in the world. Like a lot of who's looked at job postings for engineers, like to try to find a job. A lot of you have seen those. How many of them say 5 years experience? A lot of them. I figured it out because engineers don't have to know anything. They just have to know which book to look in, and they want some other company to have bought you all those books. All right. So this class is about CNC machining, right? And this class is about degree requirements. We've determined that. What else is the class about? Anybody? Wait, stand up if you have read the course description for this class. Ever in your life. If you ever read the course description, stand up. That's cool. Oh, you guys rely on, you're the Logan at that table is what we've learned. Stay standing if you read the course description within the last 2 weeks. All right, so you know what the class is about, right? Tell me about the class is about. You guys can sit down.
Well, from my reading of it, it's both learning CNC machining and CAM software.
CNC machining and CAM software, those words are in the course description. You stayed up, right? What else is the class about? It's honest. Honest, you stayed up. No? Didn't somebody over here stay up? You pass. That's not a good way to pass the class. Do you remember, though? The word materials appears in the course description. We call that art to part when we talk about it here in the class, and we're going to have an entire lecture, maybe 2 of them, where we focus on the process of going from art to part. The art being the design, right? And the part being like the iPhone with no battery. There's a funny story about why that iPhone has no battery. But we don't have time for funny stories now, at least not anymore. So we are going to talk about going from art to part. We are going to talk about CNC machining. It does fulfill degree requirements. Somebody said materials, right? The word materials is in there. Anybody know what word, like not and or but or it or whatever, but what like what significant word, what word with semantic content appears most often in the course description? I know because I counted. In fact, I have a slide, and those slides I was going to use, there's a slide for this, and I will post them on Canvas so you guys can go look at the slides. Anybody know what word it is? Yep. Manufacturing. We talk about manufacturing. We talk about manufacturing engineering. We talk about manufacturing science. Those phrases occur over and over again throughout. There's another important word in there that we talk about, which is prototype. We specifically talk about prototype manufacturing. We talk about CNC machining. Why is CNC machining important to us when we talk about this in the class? Anybody know? Anybody want to volunteer? Well, we know you pass. You, green shirt. Why is CNC machining important? You're one of the people that stayed up because you wanted to learn CNC machining, right? Why is CNC machining important? Why do we focus on it in this class?
Well, I see it a lot in just the world, like how things are made.
You see it a lot in the world and how things are made. Anybody else? Why is CNC machining important? Yep.
It will allow us to build the prototypes.
It allows us to make the prototypes. We do, well, before COVID, we used to have tours of the campus. Did anybody go on a tour of the campus before deciding whether or not to come here? Was it at a time when you could actually go inside buildings? Yeah. Did you walk through the manufacturing labs during your tour? Was it a factor in your decision to come to WPI? Yeah. Okay, cool. I love it when I hear that. We love it when tour groups come in. We especially love it when people come back and say, I came to WPI because of your cool labs. I remember years ago, and this was back when Anybody know how long we've been doing 3D printing as like a commercial enterprise? I mean, not we like here at WPI, but the world in general has been doing 3D printing as a commercial thing. Like since when could you go to a company and get something 3D printed for you? Anybody know? First commercialization I know of the process was in about 1985. So we've been doing 3D printing for a long time as a commercial process. Now in the early 2000s, it started to become super popular. I think it's because of TED Talks. And I think that, well, and the technology was getting a lot better and a lot more efficient and more people could do it and it was way cheaper. I mean, those early 1985 3D printers, millions of dollars to have them. I remember we got something 3D printed back, company I worked for in like 1996 or something. I couldn't believe it because like they could make the box. We could have the shape of the thing we wanted. And it only took like a month. And I worked for a startup. It was a medical device manufacturing startup. And I got to go to the place where they did the 3D printing and pick it up because I was like the youngest person. And so they always sent me out to do shit like that. But anyways, like I couldn't believe it. That was so cool. Then I was working here and we'd do those tour groups. And this father, so anybody a tour guide, campus tours in the class? So is it usually the students who ask questions or the parents?
The parents.
Yeah, it's the parents, yeah. And so it's the same deal in this tour group. The parent pulls me aside and says, you guys do any rapid prototyping here at WPI? He's pretty smart, he'd seen a TED Talk. And I said, well, hey, I just said yes. Right, we do rapid prototyping here. It was before WPI owned a 3D printer to the best of my knowledge. But I figured that 1/2 inch deep, 1/2 inch step over, 800 inches a minute in aluminum, that was rapid. Right, we could fill buckets with chips really quickly and we could turn stock material into prototypes fast. So yeah, rapid prototyping. So anyway, so manufacturing, CNC machining, rapid prototyping, it's an important process in the world today. I would say that CNC machining is the most prolific manufacturing process in the world. There is nothing that you use on a daily basis that's more than 2 steps away from a CNC machine tool before it got to your hands. Maybe 3, but certainly no more than 3 steps. We could debate it. It's not that much fun to debate for the people that are at home unless they're chatting. Nobody's typing in the chat. But it's one of the most prolific manufacturing processes. So like casting, you CNC machine the molds for casting, or you CNC machine the investments for casting. So all of these different things, you CNC machine the parts that go into the different machine tools that do all the other processes, all those things. So it's a very important process for manufacturing. And so what's the difference between science and engineering, just quickly? I haven't picked on that table lately. Yeah, go ahead.
Science is studying, while engineering is more creating and developing.
So in science, we study. So you said in science, and that starts with an S, so that's good. In science, we study. What was engineering? Developing and designing. Could we think of something that starts with an E? So we. No, I'm good. You had your hand up.
We execute.
Oh, engineering. So science is about, and so scientists ask questions like, for those of you at home that can't see the whiteboard very well, the first thing was scientists study things and engineers execute things, not like chopping their heads off or anything. It's more like getting things done.
I was going to say that engineering is the application of science.
Engineering is often the application of science. I would say that to be a great engineer, you have to be a good scientist. And to be a great scientist, you have to be a great engineer. But scientists ask the question, so scientists are trying to understand, why does this happen? And engineers are trying to understand questions like, how can we use that phenomenon to solve some problem? And so I kind of like the study and the execute breakdown for science and engineering. So we're going to talk about both the science of manufacturing. So we're going to talk about, for example, one of the things we're going to talk about in week 3, remember this, in week 3 of the class, we're going to talk about, you don't have to write it down or anything, it'll be in the syllabus as soon as I post the syllabus. In week 3 of the class, we're going to talk about things like how the physics and the mechanics of how a chip forms on the edge of a cutting tool. And what makes it possible, and what makes the cutting tool break when we screw up. Right, so we're going to study that in depth in week 3 when we talk about modeling of manufacturing systems. But in general, so we're going to talk about the science, and then we're going to talk about the engineering of manufacturing. And so designers do the design part. Does that make sense? In manufacturers do the making it part. Does that make sense? And so in this class, we're going to focus on the making it part, but we're going to know something about the designing it side, partly so that we know what questions to ask the designers when they give us crappy designs. Does that make sense? And one of my goals, actually, I suppose the real reason that I teach at WPI is that I'd like to be able to make engineers that understand how things are made, so that when they become practicing engineers, they maybe will design things that can be made. And I'm going to focus on CNC machining because, well, I know a lot about CNC machining. We have a lot of CNC machine tools on campus, which means you guys have access to them and you can use them. And did I mention I know a lot about CNC machining? And you do know that no matter what the course description says, the faculty member who teaches the class teaches the thing they know, right? I see your heads going up and down, right? You've been in plenty of classes where the class was nothing about the course description. This is a unique case. I helped write the course description. And so I made sure that it was about stuff that I knew so that I could teach stuff that I knew. So this is a fairly unique class. I once took over a class for somebody, and they were amazed because I read the course description and then I made the syllabus based on what it said. They're like, you don't have to do that, you know. You just teach them whatever you like. All right, so, but it's about manufacturing, right? So what is manufacturing? If we understand what is manufacturing, we can go home for today. Because the purpose of today is that we have a common definition. Oh, and that you've formed groups, right? You guys know who's in your group? You've chosen a group name. All right, I'll give you a couple minutes at the end if you haven't chosen a group name. Like groups that are numbered by like group number 2, that's boring. Let's not be boring. It's not the time of year, especially because it's so cold outside. It's so nice and warm in here. My office has 7 windows and 1 little tiny heating unit. I have a treadmill desk in my office. The other day when it was super cold out, I was walking on the treadmill to stay warm, wearing a winter jacket and a toque. That's when I realized my office at home is warm, and so I decided I'd work from home for the rest of the day. Okay, what is manufacturing? Because if we come up with a common definition of manufacturing that we all believe, we can go home. Or, back to work, in my case. Somebody tell me, what is manufacturing? If I like your definition, we might be done.
Production of something in a scalable way.
All right, so he says production of something in a scalable way. What are the key words in that sentence? Somebody shout out. What are the key words? Production. Anybody really good at spelling? Anybody in the, it is an engineering school, so the chances are there's nobody really good at spelling. Once I was doing this in like a regular classroom, I wrote something on the board and I misspelled it, which is typical for me. Somebody said, hey, you misspelled that word. And I found a red marker and threw it to them and said, you do the red squigglies for the rest of the term. And he did. I would spell something wrong and he would run up to the whiteboard and he would do the red squiggly underneath it and go back and sit down. At least I know one person in that class was paying attention to what I was doing and saying. Production, and scalable. Does manufacturing have to be scalable? Why would we want manufacturing to be scalable? First. So we want it to be scalable if demand is elastic, right? If demand goes up and down, we want to be able to, because scalable could, I mean, when you said scalable, you totally meant you could make more, right? But scalable could also mean you could make less. So we would kind of like to be scalable, especially if demand is elastic, right? If demand goes like this, a variable, right? Not elastic.
I think like the creation process should be reproducible and consistent.
So you'd like it to be reproducible. So farming is reproducible, right? Rabbit ranching. It uses machinery, he says. So production, scalable, reproducible, using machinery. These are key words that I've gotten so far. Did I miss any key words yet? So, has anybody ever done a project in this building? Made something in this building? You have? What'd you make?
Robot.
You made a robot directly below us, right? That's the robotics lab is directly below us. So you made a robot in what, RBE 2000 or 1001, what 2001, is that the class that beats there? Yeah, okay. So were you manufacturing when you made the robot? Did you produce something? You did, you produced something. Was it scalable? Maybe. I mean, we haven't yet decided that these are the words that define manufacturing. But did you manufacture the robot? Parts of it, okay. So what makes something manufacturing? Who thinks he manufactured the robot? So he was in a lab downstairs in this room. You assembled parts, right? So assembly is a manufacturing keyword, right? You manufactured, or so you assembled parts. Did you fabricate parts? Create them, like transform raw material into something? So you did a process on raw material, made the raw material into something else. You added value to it. So you fabricated something. So you did fabrication and assembly. Did he do manufacturing? Stand up if you think he did manufacturing. We'll at least get a workout by standing up and sitting down, right? All right, so you didn't stand up. Why not? You didn't want to. Okay. I don't want to stand up either. So, by the way, this is a horrible place to be if the wall collapses. All right. Did you sit down on purpose?
Yeah.
Like not because you just didn't want to stand up?
I just think
Why don't you think it's manufacturing?
when I think of manufacturing and like the image that comes to my mind, it's not like assembling a robot or something like that. It just,
When you think of manufacturing, the image that comes to mind is not
it's not-
assembling a robot.
yeah, I don't.
Okay, that's fair. So describe the image that comes to your mind.
Well, I think more of
So, but he did that.
Yeah, but not necessarily the assembly of like a full product.
So you don't think assembly is manufacturing?
Well, I'm not sure.
Okay,
Big picture.
assembly is totally a manufacturing process. Okay, now you've learned. You know more than you did before. Sweet, my job here is done. All right, but you guys also stayed seated. Same reason, or are you just following him?
A
A little
little bit different.
bit different. All right, you go.
I wouldn't say he's a manufacturer of such a robot. You know, like he doesn't do.
Oh, I agree. By the way, I wouldn't say he did manufacturing either. But I want to know why you don't think so. I know why I don't think so. Go.
I guess it's the same thing. I mean,
Okay, you guys.
I don't know. I just like it's like kind of like him, where like get like the image of manufacturing.
It's this idea of manufacturing that we have in our mind, right?
Yeah, but I don't like know.
No, and that's why I do this. That you guys can sit back down. That's actually why I do this discussion, because who has used the word manufacturing before in a sentence, like ever in their life? Really? Never? You didn't tell people I signed up for the manufacturing class? All right, I can understand not standing up, but not raising your hand because you're too lazy? Come on. All right. Why don't I think it's manufacturing? Because you did assembly, that's a manufacturing process. You did fabrication, that's a manufacturing process. Or if you did two manufacturing processes, did you do any drilling? He did drilling, that's a manufacturing process. What other processes did you do? Yeah, design is not manufacturing. It's nothing to do with the scale. You could make one of something and be manufacturing, and so here's where we have to believe. How many of you believe that my definition of manufacturing is important to your success in the class? Like knowing what my definition is important, right? Perfect. So I say, and some people agree with me, that manufacturing is all those things. It's assembly, it's production, it often needs to be scalable. You'd like it to be reproducible. It doesn't have to be, but it's expensive when it's not. We often use machinery. It's all those things. But manufacturing is simply the process of taking some raw materials, turning them into something that have more value than they had before. Changing the state of some material into something that has more value, and doing that with the intent to distribute or sell that thing that you made. So I say you didn't do manufacturing because you didn't intend to sell that robot. That's why. And you made the robot because you wanted to make the robot. And they call that, like the lab downstairs, they call it the makerspace, right? And you do manufacturing processes in a makerspace. I say that it doesn't become manufacturing until you're doing it with intent to sell. And that lines up with sort of the manufacturing industry, right? Who's heard the term on the news, like manufacturing is up or manufacturing is down, right? We've heard this, people talk about these things. They're not talking about the making part of manufacturing. They're talking about the revenue side of manufacturing, the intent to sell. And so it's making, that's all the processes. And so we're going to do manufacturing processes in the labs. If you have intent to sell stuff that you're making in the labs, you shouldn't tell me about it because I'll have to tell you to stop, because we're not supposed to use the labs to make stuff that we sell and stuff like that. So we call them manufacturing laboratories, but it's really about the manufacturing processes that we do in those laboratories. But what makes it manufacturing is the other side of it, right? And so I'll let you guys go in 1 minute, but you know that at the end of the term, there's evaluations you fill out, stuff like that. It used to be that those evaluations were on paper. Now they're like electronic and automated and stuff. So here's what I know about those evaluations. If none of you do the evaluation of me, I get yelled at for not telling you to do the evaluations. And I know that because once I forgot to hand out the forms to the class when they were paper forms. So I know that if none of you do the evaluation of me, I get yelled at for not giving you the things. I also know that no matter how high you score me or how low you score me, it does not affect my continued employment as a faculty member here at WPI. Maybe I've never scored low enough to have the impact. I don't know. But it certainly doesn't impact whether or not I get a raise next year. but I do read the comments. Oh, by the way, if you have feedback and you want it to affect this class, the one that you're in, give me the feedback right away. Right? Don't wait for the form at the end of the term, because it may make the next class better, but it won't make this one better if you wait until the end of the term. But I do read the comments that come back on those. And one term, when I started forming this opinion, like I had to decide that was my definition of manufacturing, right? And so I would talk a little bit about the business side of manufacturing. And I had a lot of students that term complain that I talk too much about business, not enough about engineering. And I started this the very next term. Everybody stand up. Thank you. All right, sit back down if you have a trust fund and never need a job. Okay, the rest of us that are still standing are going to need a job someday. Let's try to work at companies that don't fail. So we will talk a little bit about the business side of manufacturing here, but we will talk mostly about the manufacturing processes and the engineering and science side of manufacturing. I thank you very much for being here. I promise that I will actually have the syllabus posted. It won't just be an empty Canvas site. Sometime later today, including all of the times and all of the links for accessing the videos live and all that stuff. And thanks very much for being here. I will see you all when? When do we meet again? Tuesday in this room, right? Do we meet on Wednesdays in this room also? Okay, I thought so, but I hadn't checked the schedule. And you guys know how good Workday is for checking the schedule. Oh, I'll be totally screwed up.